Hi, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting on Stage 2 LRT update. It's pretty exciting to see where we are. We all see the visible construction going on, but where exactly are we in this project? And so we're going to get updates on what's happening, and we've got a whole team here. First, I'm just going to read a land acknowledgement. I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I would like to honor the land and the peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Damon Berlin. Many of you have been in contact with him before as a part of the Stage 2 team. And I'll let Damon introduce the rest of the team who's here and put on the presentation. Thanks, Damon.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, of course, for once again hosting what I believe to be a very important annual presentation that we've started doing. I think it's lovely that you're so caring and wonderful to your community. And all of you who think she is great, you're right. I'm Damon Berlin. I am with the Stage 2 team. I am primarily involved in stakeholder relations for Ward 7. With the Stage 2 team, I have with me tonight Rosanna Baggs and Charmaine Williams. This evening, Campbell Inwood will also be joining us. He's just dealing with his 1-year-olds and will join us when he's available. From the KEV team, we have Jamie Robinson, the Director of Stakeholder Relations and Communications. With him is also Susan Bartlett and Jan, who I do not believe is here yet, but is the Manager of Environmental for KEV. With that, and with no objections, I will hopefully successfully share my screen and begin the presentation. Buttons have been pressed. Are you seeing? No, we're thinking. Here we go. Here we go. Good. All right, so here we are once again, Ward 7 project update for Ward 7. It's a wonderful thing we get to do and see each other. Some of you I've seen as recently as last night and Monday night. And I thank you for once again sharing your time with me and the teams in order to learn more about the project and hopefully have some fun in the process. Now, while we are here to talk about Ward 7, it's always important to remember and acknowledge that this is an extremely huge project that goes from the east at Trim Station all the way to Moody Station in the west with the LMSF just on the other side of Moody Drive. And we can't forget the south, where we go all the way down to Limebank, with a wonderful connection to the Ottawa Airport, which so many people in Stage 1 told me, what's the point in doing this if I have to take a taxi from the airport? Well, here we are. Now, Ward 7, however, is a special case, for it is the biggest ward in terms of the number of stations in Stage 2, and therefore the number of community associations, the number of impacts, and in the end, the number of people who will be able to enjoy the system. And so that's wonderful. We start with 8 stations plus the LMSF off in the left. We have approximately 10 kilometers of rail. We have a 3-kilometer Byron Tunnel and Parkway Tunnel and a small, not to scale, a Connaught Tunnel. And those are going to allow for vehicles to drive and people to live and enjoy, say, for example, the river, the Sir Johnny McDonald Parkway, or continue to use local streets like Connaught. Furthermore, included in this extensive package of a project is the fact that when it is up and running and operational, upwards of 500,000 buses will be removed from the Sir Johnny McDonald. So those of you who have the benefit of enjoying the view of the river and may not enjoy the buses, well, that will one day change sooner than later. I now have a video that I will play. Now this time there's no volume, so that is not missing. There we go. So forgive us, this is not part of Ward 7. However, it is nice to see the amount of progress that has been made slightly east of our ward. And here we are, Mississippi Station. You can see where that tunnel starts to begin. I'm always blown away by the progress year after year. I don't know if you'll remember our first presentations, but we were mostly talking about the realignment of Sir Johnny McDonald Parkway. We'll talk about that again once we're done building the tunnel, don't worry. Sherbourne Station. And here we are, New Orchard Station, quite advanced, not yet turned over. And we approach the end of our tunnel as we arrive at Lincoln Field Station. Here we can see the pedestrian bridge, the split structure that will allow the trains to head to either Algonquin or Moody. The Connaught Tunnel. This is what's called the Pinecrest Trench as we arrive at Queensview Station. Here we are on the north side of Highway 417. You can see the different works that have been done in order to allow the train to get over under the on or off ramps or vehicular infrastructure that currently exists. Bayshore. Now we're in the guideway between Bayshore and Moody Station. Those right there at the bottom there, those were rails that have been delivered. There's an OCS pole, overhead catenary system. Moody Station on the east side of Moody. And lastly, the LMSF sandwich between the Highway 417 and Corkstown Road. matching beautifully with the white snowy background. I hope you enjoyed that and it gave you a different perspective. And now we will start from the east as we work our way west. We begin with Kitchissippi Station. Now, things that we can see here, we've got the temporary bus bridge that is allowing buses to get over the construction for the station. The station construction is beginning and will be ongoing until summer 2024. And quickly we find ourselves into the cut and cover tunnel. We have the approximately 3 kilometer tunnel that I mentioned. Now, though the tunneling activities, they did begin in 2020, and the concrete pours for New Orchard Station began in June 21. And you'll see some, actually in the next image, pictures of tunnel roofs that are poured. Now, the first one was poured in June 22, and more sections have been completed in that fashion. We can also state that Byron and Parkway Tunnel is approximately 60% complete, and anticipated completion is 2024. In order to undertake the concrete pouring, Kev is employing 2 separate traveling systems. This here is an example of the Everest system and is used primarily in the Parkway Tunnel. And what it allows the constructor to do is to, once the invert slab, which is the floor, is poured, it allows the walls and roof to be poured as well. And then would be moved along down the alignment. It's proven to be a very effective way at enhancing the schedule and making things more efficient as they go forward. It allows, for example, approximately 250 meters cubed poured in a 15-meter section. And then what we end up with is the other traveling system, and this one's called the Perry system, and is utilized primarily in the Byron Tunnel. They have 2 of the Perry travelers, whereas there are 3 of the Everest travelers. In this instance, we have width of the tunnel is approximately 10 meters. And this allows, again, for the pouring of the walls and the roof in a more fitting manner. The width of the tunnel, as I mentioned, is 10 meters at its narrowest point, and it is 17 meters wide at stations, which will accommodate the train platforms. And you'll see different layouts in the tunnel as the space is more confined. Here we are finishing the Byron Tunnel at the East Portal. Starting the tunnel at the East Portal. We can see the pedestrian bridge temporary that was installed to maintain pedestrian connectivity. There's still quite a bit of excavation to go here just to bring the grade down so that the train can continue at the same grade. Fun fact, a train can only use incline or decline that is maximum of 5%. And here we go. So just to say that the rock breaking has been ongoing and with the excavation and is anticipated over the next couple of months. And looking south, we have Rochester Fields here in the foreground. It's not exactly what residents remember pre-construction. However, This is temporary, regardless of the duration of temporary. It is temporary. And once it's completed, Kev will be returning this back to its, if it's summer, green glory. If it's not, wet, chilly glory. White, chilly glory, pardon me. And also what we can see here is a section of the roof that has been completed. So not only do we see the struts and the whalers where it's not yet done, but here that's amazing. This is incredible work and incredible resiliency of the residents who are nearby. Thank you to both Kev and the residents. And here we are, now we are looking east and we are behind 655 Richmond Road. You can see strut anchors, excavated walls in place, and this will be until the tunnel walls and roof are ready to be poured. And as we mentioned earlier, that will be done via the Everest Traveler system. And as we make our turn south, past 727, well, in between 727 and 75 Cleary, we also have, once again, similar struts and whalers, and the work is progressing faster than I can truly believe. What we can also see here is what has become affectionately known as Mount Cleary. And we will share some more information as we go through there. Here we are, 747 Richmond Road, just slightly further west. The section of the tunnel has been completed and the crews are installing a water main on the top of the roof. And then we did meet with our folks who live around here on Monday night to talk about this element that is upcoming, which is the excavation of the guideway that's remaining. That's why we realigned Richmond Road. Now here's a clearer point. We must connect these two sections, and that's why Richmond Road was realigned in this sense. This will be the configuration for Richmond Road until the end of 2024. We will begin in early April, the beginning of the drilling of the 50 soldier piles, which will be about a 6 to 8 week process, at which point excavation and rock breaking will continue. It is anticipated that this section will see that kind of work up until the end of 2023. Excuse me. Always important to remind people of what we do have, and what we have are 2 detours. Cleary was closed and Richmond Road was realigned. As stated and as repeated here, this roadway reinstatement is made at the end of 2024. I will caution everyone that roadways don't get done very well in the winter. If weather is not cooperative, there might be some delays in that timeline. This is a private access for the daycare, for the First Unitarian Congregation, for Unitarian House, and for 75 Cleary right here. What we have is a new signalized intersection, and we heard some feedback on Monday night about that signal, and we're working with our traffic team and our signals team to make that a better situation for residents who are using that. And we're also reaching out to Google Maps and looking at naming the road to help facilitate the deliveries that have become slightly more problematic once this detour was put in place. Here we are, Sherbourne Station. See 75 Cleary in the background there. And we see an incredible amount of progress. This station will be handed over to PCL. PCL is the station constructor in the west, and anticipate that station construction to begin in August of this year, which is pretty exciting. Recently, less than 2 weeks ago, Lockhart was realigned in order to allow for the excavation of the tunnel that was underneath. In order to realign it, the tunnel that is underneath this section of roadway was excavated, floor or invert slab poured, walls poured, roof poured, cured, backfilled, and now there's a road on it. To me, that shows an incredible amount of progress. Not only that, but it shows, okay, there is an end in sight. And I hope you see that as well. As we move slightly further west, we have the Woodruff Bridge. And so that was installed with a 13-day, 2-week closure of Woodruff. And this will be removed this summer. And we're anticipating an approximate 2 weeks removal for that as well. And hopefully these cars move once we decide to remove that bridge. But the reason why we can remove that bridge is because this is the roof that has been poured underneath the Woodruff Bridge, which for anyone who is in my era will understand the reference of Under the Bridge Downtown, though it's not downtown. Apologies for the inaccuracy of the Red Hot Chili Peppers song. Now, the Ancaster connector, as I just described about the Lockhart connector, was moved a month ago in advance of the Lockhart one, and it allowed also for the excavation of the tunnel that had been underneath the connector. What you see here in the foreground of the picture is the rock that has been excavated after it has been broken up, and then will be removed, and then will be used as backfill once the tunnel is complete and ready to be backfilled. New Orchard Station is ready to be turned over to PCL, and they, as I mentioned earlier, they're the station constructors, and we anticipate that to occur in the coming months, which will move that station along. However, all of the structural work has been completed in this area. You are all more than likely aware of the Ambleside Detour. So the westbound Ambleside Detour began in September 22 and is planned to be for approximately 16 months. We do anticipate an eastbound closure beginning on the Friday, April 14th and ending early morning Monday, April 17th to all eastbound vehicles. And those vehicles will use the same routing but opposite direction as the westbound detour along McEwen, Ambleside, and New Orchard. And as we head further west with 1190 Richmond Road, just off the picture to our left, we see the end of the tunnel with the same whalers and struts preventing any walls from coming in before everything's been poured. And we can also state that the guideway construction between the portal and Lincoln Field Station is underway, and that has been some of the activities that you've witnessed if you live in and around this area. Lincoln Field Station is in the background. In the foreground, we see Carling Avenue Bridge. The excavation that went under there was quite substantial. The station, mind you, Lincoln Field Station, was handed over to PCL in April 2021. And we do anticipate that it will be completed later this spring, which is pretty exciting. It doesn't mean we'll be going into that station. No, this whole system will open in the west as one. However, one being finished means more resources for others. The other thing I'd like to mention is that Prior to the end of April, we do anticipate that once signals have been installed, we'll be able to have pedestrians use the north sidewalk from this point here all the way to Lincoln Fields Mall. And what we see right here, this is the J ramp, and that has been used to connect the buses from Carling Avenue to the Sir Johnny MacDonald Parkway. That was opened at the end of 2022 and has allowed space to be freed up for guideway construction. The Woodruff Pedestrian Bridge. The Woodruff Pedestrian Bridge is an important function and piece of the communities on either side of it. And it's the loss of the old one prior to the new one opening, I acknowledge, has been a challenge for the communities. And I want to thank the students, the parents, the school, and everybody for utilizing the detour as is required, and to let you know that this bridge will be open prior to students returning to school this coming fall. And that's very exciting. Remaining work to be done on the bridge. We do need the retaining wall needs to be installed on the east side of the bridge, and the embankment. The north-south MUP from Woodruff High School to Carling Avenue might be deviated or closed this summer following the school year, and all the MUPs are to be rebuilt. The bridge and the pathway will open later, and the commitment is prior to the school year. It doesn't mean that it will open on the first day of school. It just means there's work to do, and the commitment is get it done before the kids go back to school. We might see it done sooner. Still in the foreground here, we have the Woodruff Pedestrian Bridge. However, we have the split structure in the background, and it is this split structure that will allow the trains to divert to either Moody or Algonquin destination points. Work on the split structure bridge, the LRT guideway is going or ongoing, pardon me, and that's where we're at with that. And really, that was one of the more advanced structures in this whole project, and remains in a great state there. As we get into Connaught Park, we know that the guideway excavation between the tunnel portal and the split structure will begin in the summer of 2024. We do anticipate guideway installation to begin this summer in Connaught Park. And then the Connaught Tunnel, we see this here. It is probably 50% complete. The construction activities over the next few months are focused on the excavation of the tunnel portal, installing forms and rebar, the pouring of concrete, the tunnel roof, on the floor first before the walls, and then the roof. Sorry, I'm out of order there, and followed, which will be followed by waterproofing and backfilling. We do anticipate later this spring, Connaught Avenue will be basically, as we said at the Lockhart connector and Ancaster connector, Connaught was realigned in order to allow for this excavation to go forward. Once this section has been poured, including the roof and backfilled, that will allow Connaught to be realigned and the excavation to continue. And this is a photo of the invert slab floor, for those of you who didn't take notes, in the Connaught Tunnel. Because of the temperature and the time of year, it's under tarp, and it's curing in the method. Queensview Station is a station that began its construction in October 2022. and is anticipated to be completed early next year, which is pretty fantastic. Included in the Queensview station is the Queensview pedestrian bridge. Piers have been erected on either side of the highway, and then the bridge will be lifted into place later this summer, and the highway will require a full closure of the highway in order to safely lift, mount, and install the bridge structure. I do want to make an important note that just because the bridge has been installed, it doesn't mean it will be available for public use. Unfortunately, due to the fact, well, not unfortunately, however, due to the fact that the bridge on the north side will lead into Queensview Station, then we are unable to allow access to that, for the station itself requires occupancy and is a construction zone. Thus, that pedestrian feature, while installed, will not be available prior to the operation of the system itself. We have the Pinecrest Trench here, and it's approximately 70% complete, and is what connects the Queensview and Pinecrest stations along the north side of Highway 417. As we get here to Pinecrest Station, we find ourselves enjoying the fact that we are at the intersections of the highway, which, as I mentioned earlier, provided some challenges and some engineering expertise to allow for the system to pass underneath the ramps and whatnot. The construction of the guideway west of Pinecrest Station began in 2022. The guideway is at grade and parallel to the highway. And the early activities in the guideway were focused on the earthworks. That includes removal of asphalt, rock breaking, excavation, hauling of said excavated material. Excavations of the guideway will continue into and further into 2020. The Pinecrest off-ramp is scheduled to reopen in fall 2023. I know this was an important connection point and will return to be in this fall. And we thank everyone for their understanding and patience as this has been undertaken. Very important to allow for these elements to be constructed. And at Bayshore Station, we had it partially handed over to PCL to begin station construction in July. There are, however, ongoing civil works in the station construction area, including a tunnel between the station platforms, which is what we see in the photo. However, it is important to note the tunnel is not for general traffic or general public. It will be used for maintenance as well as for emergency egress should that ever be required. The guideway construction, this photo is of the guideway, and as we took the video over top, these are the rails that have been delivered and are awaiting welding and installation when the guideway is ready for it. OCS foundations have been installed and the rail has been delivered. And so hopefully this spring, we're going to start seeing some of that activity go forward. Installation of the drainage system between Holly Acres and Moody Station and completion of the drainage system and duct banks between Pinecrest Station and Moody Station was a priority in 2020. The installation of the underground foundations needed to support the overhead catenary system poles is an additional priority of 2023. Once these works are complete, that's when the guideway will be graded with the spreading of sub ballast and ballast as well. And then we can start seeing some rails going. At Moody Station, That construction began about a year ago in March 2022 and is anticipated to see completion by the end of this year, which is pretty exciting. I'm always very impressed at how this just keeps growing every time I go by it or see a photo of it. It just seems to like building blocks, and my children are playing with it and making it bigger and bigger every time I go by. Corkstown Road, well, that has been a sticking point for some people over the last few months, and we appreciate your patience for that. While important connections were made, the installation of utilities along the north side of the road, which then required crossing to provide service to the light maintenance and storage facility on the north side or the south side of Corkstown Road, the north side of Highway 417. Corkstown Road will receive a full resurfacing later this year. At this point, with the closed asphalt plants, we wanted to open up the roadway for bidirectional traffic. And what we wanted to do was also make sure that the road was in a returnable state to the community once the resources are available. And here we have the light maintenance and storage facility. I'm amazed. We will see occupancy here in the coming months, and that's pretty exciting. And really an opportunity for more things to advance in this area in terms of preparing for the eventual opening of the system. And for those of you who are not as familiar, the light maintenance and storage facility will do things like wash the vehicles, fill their sand tanks. Now, sand is important in trains because it is the sand that grips between the metal wheels and the metal rails. So it allows better traction. And included in that will be light maintenance. Any heavy work will always be done down at the Belfast yards. However, this will also allow for vehicles to stage more efficiently and effectively at the beginning of any day when, you know, we should arrive at a station, we expect a train to arrive. Do we ever really think about how they got there? Because they all have to stage in a certain place in order to provide that 2 to 3 minute delivery on a weekday peak. Now, we've heard from the community consternation about the stockpiling of materials that have been popping up in and around station excavation, tunnel excavation, and even if there isn't tunnel excavation, then sometimes fill is brought from other places due to the limited footprint that KEV is allowed to utilize for the construction of this system. It has resulted in, as what I mentioned, the affectionately known Mount Cleary. Now, the stockpiling have been created for soil excavated, and the creation of the multiple stockpile areas does have significant cost savings for this large project, but also greater environmental stewardship. The less that a truck has to drive in order to remove fill, and then the less it has to drive to bring it back, is in of itself a benefit to our environment, which I very much appreciate. I can also appreciate the concern people have for these piles. At Lincoln Fields, at the north side of Lincoln Fields, right at the end of the west portal, you can see a berm-like fashion here and a pile over here. Now, all the stockpile areas contain only clean fill, non-contaminated soil. Steps are taken to mitigate the impact on the surrounding area, which includes committing to good housekeeping and keeping areas tidy and organized. As the snow melts, please afford the time for Kev to collect anything that ended up in these piles that shouldn't be there. I acknowledge that when we look at our windows, we see one thing, but if they're not looking at it at the same time we are, that doesn't mean that they're not going to do it. They just need to see it, know it, and allocate the resources towards it. Here is one west of Woodruff High School. I also want to point out that each stockpile is being monitored for dust and will receive water suppressant if it is required. There is a high volume of trucks that will be using these areas to dispose of excavated solids. And access to these areas will be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Construction equipment will also be on site full-time, create and maintain the stockpiles. By what we mean when we say create and maintain, it's not just a matter of building a super tall pile. Well, one, it can't be too high. Two, it needs to be stable. And three, it needs to be available for them to utilize, because that's the whole point of these temporary piles. And this is the fourth example, though I could show many more pictures. I value time and I want to allocate more time for questions than looking at these sorts of pictures. This one is in Connaught Park. It's quite large, and I can tell you, having met with the residents last night, some of you I saw earlier before the presentation started, it is impactful, and we're not here to tell you it's not, but Kev has confirmed that it is clean or not contaminated. Clean might be a wrong word to use when talking about excavated material. So while we do anticipate to build 2 landforms in Connaught Park, they won't be this size and not in that location. And this, as I mentioned, will be used primarily for backfilling tunnels. And I do like to talk a bit about the final state before we get too stuck into what is our current present. From the east, the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, well, it will be realigned. Its realignment is required in order to, was required in order to allow for construction of the tunnel, which you can see goes underneath the new alignment. Also, what we will get, and we have the next slide actually will talk to it, but here you can see the Cleary underpass right here. And did I get that one right? And then we have the Rochester Field signalized crossing right here. While this does show that in greater detail, it's a little less real. So we have the Churchill Avenue pedestrian underpass. So at the north end of Churchill North, we have an at-grade signalized crossing over here at just west of Kitchissippi Station. We have a signalized at-grade crossing at Rochester Field, and the pedestrian underpass, which is connecting into the pathway and the community at Unitarian House and McKellar Park. In terms of when we can expect to see these, the fall of this year is a possibility for the Churchill Avenue underpass. The Cleary underpass is anticipated 2025 or later, as are the SJAM or Sir John A. Macdonald at-grade crossings. The reason for that is we can't build those until the roadway's been realigned, and we can't realign the roadway until we've completed the tunnel. It is a very important a part of the process, but is not something that can be undertaken ahead of its time. Byron Linear Park. So we do have the designs at the city that Kev has developed, and we are reviewing them. And then once they've been finalized, then they will be shared with the community. In terms of Richmond Road Complete Streets, That implementation will follow substantial completion of stage 2. Whereas with Byron Linear Park, where the city is also reviewing those designs and will also share those with the community once they are finalized, we'll be able to begin backfilling the tunnel once it's poured, and then they will be able to begin sections of the park. That being said, when and where is still to be determined. However, I do find myself filled with encouragement when I think that images like this aren't only going to be images in our future. Now I've shared this with some people. Some of you may not have seen this. In order to accommodate an infrastructure underneath the ground and above the tunnel in support of the stations and the system, what Kev has done is they've created a beautiful solution called the green roof solution, which we have at Sherbourne Station, including seating, seat walls, paved nodes, ramps, and stairs. They won't be winter maintained. But what we are is we're building this in opportunities for future programming. And that is what's super exciting. Whoop. And then here at New Orchard, a bit smaller in size, however, with the same sort of features, paved interlock nodes, planting, and what we have is nice architectural cladding. It's going to fit into the passive nature of Byron Linear Park with some hard and soft landscaping, which is very consistent with the way that parks are being built in the city these days, and affords an opportunity for some programming that is ever so valued by community members, myself included. I spoke about the Ancaster connection. Well, right now it's over here. And then once that tunnel is done, then it'll go back here. And in the final state, it will be built as a northbound right turn only. And that was a community request and a project commitment. And at Richardson Avenue, what we do want to point out is a future bus stop, pedestrian crossing, PXO. We have sidewalks and cycle tracks. And what I want to keep showing this for is that there had been a connection to Richmond Road. It has since been closed off, and this is that final state, which is very friendly to those of us who don't drive everywhere we go. And it's probably the last time I show this one, but at Edgeworth, we did end up with some challenges after infrastructure was removed in order to undertake a lot of the construction that was done there, which did have some people utilizing this as a access point to Richmond Road, which it's not intended to be. So the final state, we're going to have sidewalk, cycle track. We have some bollards down here, really removing the opportunity for our four-wheel drive fiends who decide to take over our neighborhoods inappropriately. Of course, you who are sitting here listening to me don't need me to tell you that there are community impacts. I want to let everyone know that the City of Ottawa has a bylaw that states that construction activities are allowed between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays. On Sundays, it can start as early as 9 a.m. and go to 10 p.m. I know that I go to bed earlier. I know my kids do too, but that doesn't mean that it is officially nighttime in the eyes of the bylaw. That begins after 10 p.m. 2022 saw an increase in night work, and 2023 will continue to see that increase of night and weekend work. All work is required, if it will occur overnight, to have an approved noise bylaw exemption. I want you to know that Councillor Kavanaugh works diligently to do her best at reducing the impacts that her residents experience from the night work that is required to deliver this project. For example, unless there's an emergency, you won't hear a hydrovac truck. Those are those large vacuum trucks. As well, there's no hoe ramming, the breaking of rock. There's notes in there about tailgate slamming. There's when near residential areas, no backup beepers, but the broadband alarms are just a few of the conditions that she puts in her her approvals of the exemption requests. You will receive electronically a public notice for night work. I also manage a distribution list, and Kev provides me a summary at the beginning of every week, which I in turn share with any person who emails me, as well as all of the community associations and institutions. And what that does is it just shows a high level example of each area of activity and the anticipated works that may occur overnight that week or will occur overnight that week, just not the days that it will occur. I have taken the liberty of bolding the elements that I see that might be cause for greater attention, and I hope that is appreciated. Please feel free to email me to add yourself to the list. That's my pleasure to do so. Construction is a big part of an LRT system, and of course, vehicles are noisy. Construction is dusty, and that's why Kev sweeps the streets and clears the snow. Their trucks are only supposed to drive on approved and designated haul routes in the city of Ottawa. And so that is part of it. Like they're creating impacts are created, but also solutions to those impacts, when at all possible, are being implemented and instituted. And it is never goes without saying that the public and worker safety is paramount in the eyes of the city of Ottawa, in the eyes of Kev, in the eyes of Councillor Kavanaugh, in the eyes of everyone who is in and around this. We are one city, all of us. Kev is building, the city is paying. We are all going to benefit from it. We appreciate your patience, your understanding, and I very much value your questions, your input, as well as any email that you can provide to me that helps me help you in any way I can. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to bring this to questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see other people and not just myself. I'm also going to apologize as my children are fighting the bedtime again. So if you hear stomping and yelling, it's not my internal voices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damon. We've had quite a few questions already being asked in the chat, and a lot of them got answers between Campbell, because Campbell Inwood, who specializes in the road questions, and Rosanna has answered a few as well. So what I can do is just summarize some of the questions in case people weren't checking the chat. If you want me to do that, is that okay? Yeah, okay. Of course, people are disappointed about the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, me included. We take it to heart when we hear dates being put forward, or even approximate dates. And so there was questions about that. And I believe that Rosanna's addressing them in terms of the but the one question is, why is it delayed? Why is it further delayed?
Right now, it was, I don't know if we could say further delayed. The summer is still the summer before school. I called it fall just because I always likened fall to going back to school. I don't like to think kids go back to school in the summer. That being said, if Jimmy wants to speak to anything specific, I can say generally speaking, the delay is the delay that occurred last year when the old one was closed. And what the team has been doing has been redesigning, which you're aware of, ordering the long lead items, which you're aware of. Now it's going to be the installation of those long lead items, the rerouting of MUPs, and all of those elements, because building the bridge is one thing, but then we still need to connect to the MUP infrastructure. I too am very disappointed that one was closed before the other. That was a commitment that I had personally made to the community, and we had put into the contract. And I know I've said this before, but there are things that arrive with construction, and this is not on Kev and it's not on the city. This is one of those things that occur, and it's not great. And it hurt me to tell you that it was going to close and not open. And I'm just super excited that it will open, and I hope you share my excitement.
There's a number of questions on the structure, on the grade that Rosanna has addressed, related to the very much required accessibility standards of less than 5%. And I know that people have questioned that since they look at it from afar and find it looks a lot steeper. But that is the what's out there. And
Right.
So those questions have been answered.
Yeah, so I can just, so that everybody has the benefit of it, the standard grade that is required as a maximum for any kind of pedestrian facility is 5%. That is stated in legislation and regulations. It's not a city standards. The city is required to construct any new infrastructure to that grade or under, which I can confirm that this has been designed to it. It's, I believe, between 4.7 and 4.9%. These grades have been vetted through the province, through multiple working groups, through a lot of consultation, and that is the number that the province has come with. So we can confidently say that although it looks from a distance like it's on a major tilt, it is not. It is somewhat deceiving also because the abutments on either side haven't been completed. So what's going to happen on the side of the high school, when you come off the bridge, you're actually going to sweep around and do an S curve in order to be able to have the MUP coming off of it and get you down to the grade necessary at a less than 5%. And the same will happen on the other side. I do see Don Patterson's hand up. I know he has been dealing with me with a lot of AODA concerns. So I'm not sure if it's pertaining to this, Don, or if you had something in specific.
I'll have to get Barb to unmute him.
No, it's a different question about accessibility of the bus stop at New Orchard.
Okay, which is their concern?
Yes, if I can continue with it. We're happy to have the bus stop back after missing the one in front of 1025 Richmond. But the problem with it is it's very narrow. It's a very small area. There's a raised curb on each side and a flat area. There's not a lot of space there when the bus pulls up and the ramp goes down. There's very limited area on the flat area because you can't get up on the curb. The bus ramps are designed to lower onto a sidewalk so that the ramp is not as steep. When it goes down to the road surfaces where the accessible people have to sit, it is much steeper, and even for me, it's difficult to get up. So, and the size of it, is very small. If something could be done to enlarge it or make it the landing platform for the ramp higher to reduce the bus ramp slope would be very helpful. The other thing is I noticed that at McEwen, there's a double red light so pedestrians can cross the road. I don't know if that's available at New Orchard. It should be, because we have a lot of elderly and mobility impaired in our building. And that intersection is pretty hectic.
Okay, thank you, Don. What I'll do is I'll have it investigated to ensure, because OC Transpo does have a standard for a bus stop. I myself used to actually work with OC Transpo about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I'm very familiar with those standards. I helped develop a lot of them, to the point that I also know that OC Transpo's bus ramps are supposed to be 2-stage. They're supposed to be able to deploy and then also sink down for the cases in where they are supposed to be able to service at road level 2. So if that is ever an issue, advising OC Transpo of the bus number would be my first recommendation. But otherwise, in the case of this bus stop, I will look into it for you, okay? Again, anyone here on this call, if there's ever a concern about accessibility through the stage 2 office, if you send in your concern or question, Damon can always forward it to myself and I can investigate.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rosanna.
Don.
The
Thank you,
last
Don.
thing on that is just communication. That appeared and wasn't really communicated to us. So perhaps the night work letter is very good to communicate to community leaders what's happening so that they can distribute information. If things like that are being introduced could be put out in something like that to the community leaders in your email, in an email fashion, would be very informative to keep us informed of what's coming up or what we could expect in the near future. Because many people have had to change their plans or the way they do things. And when something new comes up, they have to change them again. So a little bit of forewarning and knowledge is very helpful. Thank you.
It's a good point, Don, and I will say that we do try to get notices out when we do have new activities or new elements introduced. Sometimes they're considered part and parcel of something else. And so what we'll do is we'll look at that with Jamie, and definitely we're gonna look to make sure that everyone feels like they are getting the best level of communication and support they can. Thank you so much, Don.
Okay, we've got another hand up. I see you, Stephen. I'm just going to go through some of the collective chat first, and I'll get to you right after. We went through the bridge. There's a specific question on that didn't get answered on when will Queensview Station see the installation of structural steel as well. Will there be a new MUP connection across the Connaught Tunnel once the roadway will be realigned?
In the final state for Connaught, there is a pathway that is at is south of the opening of the portal, and then it is able to connect once. Sorry, further north. I'm not making much sense with my hands. My apologies. And the first part, Jamie, about structural steel at Queensview Station.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have an answer for that. There's a lot of activity going on currently at Queensview Station, as in addition to everywhere else. But at Queensview Station, there's some conflicts between a number of utility works that have to be done in terms of water mains, sewer mains that have to be completed as well. And so there's Kev does that work, and we're currently sort of fitting that into a schedule in terms of whether that work proceeds before the station gets completed or vice versa. So I don't have a firm answer right now in terms of when that structural steel work will begin there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay. Okay, Brian Schwartz is asking enough questions about the bridge, the track behind Woodruff High School where it splits to Algonquin and Canada. Well, that's Moody. You're very optimistic, Brian. It
I
appears that
share your optimism.
it appears the track is reduced to one lane. Does that mean that east and westbound lanes will always need to wait for clearance at this location, i.e. a bottleneck?
No, they won't have to wait. And there is a way, because everything's under snow and the guideway is not down yet, but not every track needs to be above, because the split structure is allowing for one to go one way and one to go the other way. Therefore, you don't require three, but Jamie can help with that if I didn't get as clear as I intended to be.
No, I think, Damon, that's entirely fair. There won't be a bottleneck there, and between how the bridge is constructed and how the service schedules will be in place. I mean, it's intended that there's no bottleneck at all, because then that just slows down and reliability and times, and which is not what we're supposed to be doing with LRTs.
That's exactly right. And in fact, that goes to the point that there are 0 at-grade connections for the entire system, east, west, south, that just doesn't occur. As such, we wouldn't build one with the system. But it's a great question, because yes, it does look not right based upon the information I provided. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a projected date when the west side MUP, which is short for multi-use pathway, on Holly Acres will be reopened? Not sure if that's a Campbell question or if anyone else, or maybe Rosanna might know. She's been looking at a lot of these issues.
I think Rosanna or Campbell would be very well served with that one.
I believe, and I'm not 100% sure on this, we're looking sometime in the near spring. We are waiting for asphalt plants, I believe, before we can finish it. They are just starting to open up here shortly, and that would allow us to finish doing the work.
Okay. Eric is asking, does the final design include a MUP on the north side of Queensview Drive? This is a very dangerous situation for anyone walking on the south sidewalk with all the construction and traffic.
So the final design does not include a MUP on the north side of Queensway Station. However, we are, Councillor, I think you've shared this before, looking towards getting several connections into the community. So the south sidewalk would help serve the businesses along there, whereas the other MUP connections will help the community connect to the stations.
Yeah, and we're still pushing for a cycle infrastructure on Queensview. So that hasn't been finalized, but that's Bonnie's doesn't have a question, just commenting that there was a lot of middle of the night noise that lasted till 4 a.m. Don't know if you want to comment on that.
Where?
This is 1190.
1190.
So that's likely the work that we're doing in zone 2. So not I'll check, but it's the can confirm that for folks at 1190, because I think Catherine and Houston, I also sort of were commenting on the same sort of thing. That's related to the overnight work that we're doing excavating in zone 2. Just on the north side of what we call zone 2, on the north side of the cut and cover tunnel, north of 1190. I can confirm that, but we'll also again, we do folks are aware, we making sure that to keep ourselves in compliance, we do have noise and vibration monitoring. We'll go back and make sure that we're compliant, and but it really is just excavation work that we're doing, and again, apologize for the impacts that's had on folks. Okay,
I got a couple of questions from Arnett. The saved remnant of the crabapple orchard seems to be turning into a swamp with standing water because of lack of drainage. I know that Jan is on the call in terms of issues related to the environment. I don't know if that's a question for him.
I hadn't seen personally, I hadn't seen that yet. We were out there just on Friday or Thursday of last week. We hadn't seen too much of the melt in that area. However, I am aware fully of the importance of the remaining crabapple orchard, and it is a commitment to maintain it. If there is in fact standing water, then Jamie's team will go out and take a look, and if something needs to be done, it will be done.
Yeah, Jan, I can't speak for him, but he's here. He wouldn't be familiar with the area yet. He's just been with us a couple of months now. So, but I'll alert him to the situation, and he and his team can have a look at what's taking place there.
Okay. Second question from Arnott is about informal community walking paths. The last six decades, there have been well-used paths outside perimeter of the fence around Woodruff High School. Although they have been multiple attempts by crews to close it off during construction, many walkers are still managed to negotiate it. When the track and fencing are finished for the guideway going across to Algonquin, will this pathway be permanently closed, or will it continue to be a pathway around the high school?
There are pathways on the west side and on the east side of the guideway. How far down on the west side it goes, not familiar with
That's
that.
that would be the east side, because it's
So you'd be able to use the Woodruff pedestrian bridge to access the pathway that would take you down to the Pinecrest Creek Pond, for example, further south.
There is going to be a lot more green area there. I mean,
That's right.
Once the transit ways close, that's going to
It'll be
be
naturalized.
demolished.
That's right.
That will be naturalized and demolished. Trying to picture it in with what you're asking, Arnott, is I'm not quite sure, but there will be more green space overall. So obviously it's hard to picture right now, but maybe we can get more detail on how that exactly looks related to your area.
I just want to stress that if there is anyone who is taking down construction fence to circumvent it, please do not do this. This fence is up for your safety. Please respect the boundaries that the construction area has put up. They are doing it to ensure that nobody gets hurt. It is unfortunate that we are blocking some of these paths, but it is to do so that no harm is done to anyone.
Thank you. Always important. Safety first. Okay, I'm just checking because a lot of these have been, I'll go to Stephen now. I apologize for keeping you waiting, Stephen. We'll unmute you, and then I'll go back and look at the questions in chat.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I find that Richmond will, if you're taking public transport, going east on Richmond Road, there's no sidewalks, of course, and the bus stops don't seem to align with the pedestrian crossing. I'll give you just one example. The temporary road for clearing.
Yep.
The pedestrian lights, but there's no bus stop there. you have to either get off at Woodruff or get off. I don't know where you would get off. So to me it's very dangerous and yeah. The second was is all well and nice to have trees on the Byron park, but eventually trees are going to grow roots. Don't you feel that could eventually be a problem?
Those are two very good questions, Stephen. Thank you so much. I'll start with the Byron Linear Park. There will be a number of feet. I don't know the exact depth, but that will be backfilled on top of the tunnel. And that will allow for required root growth. And we have had arborists review the design and the plans, and they've signed off on that. So I think it's a very astute observation, one we've heard before, and I'm very confident in the fact that these trees will fare so much better than the former trees, where there were a few beautiful 100-year-old elm, my goodness. But fundamentally, when it was excavated, it was found that the old rail bed from the old streetcar had been left there. And so the ballast there, the gravel, meant that the water just drained right through, which meant that the roots of those trees never had a real opportunity to get the nutrients and the liquid, the water they required. And that is why there were so many challenges for a lot of those trees over there. And it is the contention of the landscape architects that is going to be a much better situation going forward. With respect to with eastbound bus on Richmond Road, I'm wondering if stopping earlier at the Hartley stop, allowing you to utilize the pedestrian crossing to the north side of Richmond Road, which would then allow you to get into the Ambleside detour area, if that might work as well. I'm not suggesting that it would, and I'm not suggesting that the lack of facilities on the south side is a good thing at all either. And I know that Rosanna has been working really closely with OC Transpo on this one as well, and might be able to offer some other points. Thank you.
Sorry, which bus stop did you say?
The bus stop further west of Woodruff at approximately Hartley. I might have the wrong street, but Rosanna can confirm this for me if she's still here.
Sorry, Damon, can you
Oh,
repeat your question?
Sorry,
I was
it's
looking at the
the
chat.
bus stop, the eastbound bus stop on Richmond Road, where it is closest to the new PXO we installed down at Hartley.
Yep. What about it?
So how close is that bus stop to the PXO?
I don't know off by hand. I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's not that far.
Yeah. Stephen, if you wanted to send me an email, I've included my email in the chat. Definitely we can unpack this and create a more tailored situation that would probably support you better. And we'd like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Stephen. I'm continuing to go through, and Kathy Vandergriff was asking about the access of the bridge over the Queensway at Queensview. Will it be open 24 hours, and can it be used without paying fare?
Yes, so the pedestrian bridge will on the north side open up to a open area, a non-paid zone, which will allow individuals to utilize the pedestrian pathway. On the south, I believe the pathway originates on Baxter Road or Street.
Okay, so it's always available.
That's right. It just
Okay.
won't be open until the system opens. But once it opens,
yeah,
you've got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine.
Great. Pardon me, I'm just seeing some of these have been answered. About this one, I don't think did, about Crystal Beach residents and the Corkstown Moody Triangle, which has become a stockpile site. Previously, they heard the area was considered a sensitive wetland, whether or not that was officially designated as such. But there's materials that's being hauled to and from there, including broken asphalt. Wouldn't this be considered contaminated? This is at Moody and Corkstown Corner have crumbled, and no doubt because of heavy trucks. Are there plans to address these problems before the intersection becomes impassable for regular cars?
Jamie, can I put that one to you, please?
I'm going to invite Jan to talk about the stockpile there.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Jan Dandalk is my name. I'm the environmental manager for the project. The first thing I'll say is that any wetlands or any other sensitive receptor that has been identified within the project footprint has an environmental management plan associated with it for ensuring that we don't put contaminated soils or contaminated materials in there. So what I'm saying is that there is no contaminated material going into a wetland, at least not a wetland that has been designated by the province as being a provincially significant wetland. There was a couple of questions earlier about stockpiled materials or materials that were moving around. And I just want to point out that prior to the project ever starting, the entire footprint was investigated with soil samples being taken, and we have used a color coding, but the entire length of the project has been identified as to whether the soils are contaminated or not contaminated, and subsequently where those soils can be reused or disposed of or moved to. And in simple terms, if the soils are clean, they can be used anywhere. And if the soils are contaminated, they need to be removed immediately from the project once they are disturbed and disposed of in an appropriate facility. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. There's another question on mounds, and that's related to 1190 Richmond Road in front of their building. They want to know, does it contain asbestos? Has it been tested? As this is a concern, and this is right in front of their property.
So going back to what I previously said, prior to the project ever starting, all areas within the footprint of the project had soil samples taken that were analyzed in a laboratory. So we knew what we were going to deal with once we started excavating in any particular area. There are areas that contain asbestos. It's not in the soils. There are some very old pipes that were installed before the 1970s that have asbestos in the concrete, and there's a couple of structures that are being demolished that were built before the 1970s and also have asbestos as insulation for electrical systems and things like that. That was very common before the rules changed in the 70s, and asbestos is essentially illegal to use after the 70s. So the answer to your question is the soils do not contain asbestos. They have been tested, and any where we've encountered or expect to encounter asbestos, there is specific plans in place to protect both our workers as well as the public and the environment.
So Jan, if I may, just to make it abundantly clear. So all the soils that we excavate for the cut and cover tunnel, we know what if they're contaminated or not. And if they are contaminated, we don't stockpile them elsewhere on our any of our lands. We take them off site to a registered facility where they can be appropriately dealt with. But otherwise, all the remaining areas and stockpiles is basically clean soil or rock, and that we can use that, and we'll use that for backfilling purposes. Have I got that right?
That's 100% correct. It is provincial law that once you disturb contaminated soils, you must immediately transport them and dispose of them in an approved regulated facility or a landfill that's designed for that. Yes. So there was, prior to the project beginning, there was an extensive soil quality analysis and program conducted. Once we disturb soils, sort of after the fact, we do a second confirmatory sampling just to confirm that what was determined prior to the project starting is correct. And with that's kind of a check and a balance. And with that, then we are 100% sure that if we have contaminated soils, that it is immediately removed once it's disturbed. This is a highly regulated process by the province of Ontario.
Thank you. There's other questions related about draining wetland at Moody and Corkstown. Does the KEV intend to do that? And because there is water there due to the storage piles. So is that the intent of KEV?
I can speak to that as well, because it has been raised as to that water and what to do with it. The project understands and knows that that water cannot be released to the environment, be it a creek, a stream, a ditch, whatever, without a number of permits being in place from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So the project team is looking for an alternate solution and not looking at releasing that water to the environment.
Thank you. I'm just jumping all over the place with questions here. The EPR for the LRT extension to Moody included a MUP or equivalent over the Moody 417 overpass bridge. The city signed off on the EPR. Was this included in what the city asked tenders for, and what did KEV respond with?
So how are we doing, Rick? I'm assuming that was you. As we've discussed, the environmental assessment overruled the EPR. The environmental assessment and then the contract. Our contract with KEV calls for a sidewalk on the west side and cycle lanes on the bridge. We did pursue a variation inquiry with KEV to install them up on the west side. That did not go forward. And now this is an ongoing conversation.
Rick, I join you in my concern, and I am asking the city because they're saying that they don't have the funds to do this. I am continuing to push for it. Okay, at this point, that I don't have a final answer, but I'm working with my colleague, the councillor for College Ward, Councillor Johnson, on this because it affects that side of the the ward. There's that ward as much as it does Bay Ward. So we're continuing to work on that issue. That's all I can say for now. But to say I'm disappointed would be an understatement. Peter Raymaker, you asked the question that everybody wants to know. What is the actual expected completion date? And when will the keys be turned over to the city? I think we should have a lottery on that one.
Well, you'll remember that that there, of course, the question is due to the fact that the 17-month delay was called. Right now, it's looking at the end of 2026 for the handover of the system of substantial completion. Of course, a lot of things can happen in a year on a project this size. So that's where we're at right now. And if Jamie wants to speak more to that, but I'm pretty sure that's it.
No, that's totally fair, Damon. Substantial completion is now planned for late 2026, and then that's not when trains begin to run. There's a gap between the time between the time of substantial completion and revenue service. So that could be a number of weeks after that time period.
That's right. Thank you, Jamie. And so, in fact, you will see trains operating on the alignment, and that's part of the testing and commissioning phase. And that's an exciting phase because we're actually seeing the infrastructure that we've long awaited operating, and each vehicle needs a number of kilometers before it's seen, verified, and signed off, as does the communications equipment, the OCS overhead catenary system, all of the electrical systems inside every station. Those are all elements that are tested and commissioned in the final years of the project. And then once substantial completion is achieved, that's when the city and OC Transpo work with operators and planners to launch the system to the public.
Peter, it's not unusual for the scale to be delayed. I got that question a million times on stage one. I just started and I wasn't sure, how to answer it. But the final answer is when it's safe to do so. I think stage one got a little rushed. I think there's an inquiry that said so, probably because they felt pressured to give a date, and that made it worse. It's going to be when it's safe to do so. And that's the only answer that really works. Proximate dates help us understand it, no doubt. But handover is different from when it is ready to use. And the handover would be the end of 26. So I believe it'll be 27 before we're sitting on the train. So that's what it looks like. In terms of questions on sleep deprivation at 1190, we've heard a number of concerns about this in other areas as well. The work is more frequent at night than is reasonable. Why is this kind of work being done at night, especially with bright lights so close to the staging area? And this is from Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. I will say we'll let Jamie speak to the work that's happening overnight, and he already did touch on that. I will point out, however, if you're feeling that lights are directed into the units, that's the sort of thing that we can work on and fix so that the next night that won't occur. So if that is one of the concerns, Catherine, please send me an email and we will get that resolved. Jamie's and his team have been so on the ball with that. Mostly they aren't in the first place, and on the rare occasions when they are, the next night they aren't.
Yeah,
in terms of the work, Jamie?
Yeah, that's fair. And so again, so the work is, I think folks are probably, depending on Catherine, that where folks are looking and out, there's different pieces of work in that area that are occurring both day and night. There's the work that I talked about in the cut and cover tunnel on the call it the north side of Richmond Road, sort of across from the entrance to 1190. There's work that's being done in terms of the stockpiles. That's taking place not every night, but it depends on when we're excavating material, and we're filling up various stockpiles. So there's likely that work as well, bringing the excavated material there and shaping the stockpiles that Damon showed pictures of earlier on. And then there's work further south, where we're excavating the guideway between Lincoln Field Station and coming up to the West Tunnel portal. So there's different types of activity that are taking place both daytime and nighttime in your area.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. There's a couple of questions from Rick, one from Rick. The LMSF has had a lot of hard surfaces that are replacing basically grass and dirt. How is excessive stormwater being managed when and not if we get a major event of rain, I guess you mean?
Yeah, I think this was a great one for Jan, if you'd agree, Jamie.
Yeah. Jan, if you can take that one.
I can't answer directly your question because that is a design question in terms of managing the amount of runoff from hard surfaces into the sewerage collection system. But what I can say is that the maintenance and storage facility falls under the leadership in engineering and environmental design, or LEED program, and it requires certification under LEED. And as part of that certification, the management of rainwater and snowmelt runoff has to be incorporated in there. And I apologize that I can't speak more to the design side of things. But from an environmental point of view, the facility will be LEED compliant and LEED certified prior to substantial completion of the project. Yeah.
So I can further add that the city and KEV also has to work with the Regional Conservation Authority to meet their requirements.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a question, just a second here, from Eric. With Bayshore Station, is there going to be new building with structural steel going in soon? As well, will work begin soon on the eastern approach of the Holly Acres rail bridge?
So
Jamie?
structural steel at so we're a couple of things. So at Bayshore Station, we've PCL has been there working on some station buildings on the west side of Bayshore Station. On the east side of Bayshore Station, what we've been doing is we have to construct a tunnel that connects the two platforms. It's a requirement from a safety perspective that there's got to be two ways to exit from trains, and so that's that work is there. So as soon as that work is complete, then we will fully hand over the entire site to PCL, the station constructor, that they will begin that work, including all the structural steel there. Pardon me. With respect to the work on the heading west from Bayshore Station over to Holly Acres and the bridge there, I don't have a schedule for that. I know that there's conflicts with utilities over in that area that I'm not sure that they've been resolved right now. So I don't know when that work on that particular section of the guideway will be beginning. We can take that away and get back to you on that.
Thank you. In regards to stage one, we were just talking about stage one and the challenges and disruptions. How are you assuring that it will not happen with stage two?
The challenges with the system. Well, the thing I will point out is stage one was the first stage. And therefore, we're talking about new technology, we're talking about new infrastructure and new management. And truly, Councillor Kavanaugh made a few good points that I won't repeat. However, she did talk about some of the other challenges that led to the stage 1 reality. I do think that we have an opportunity to learn from stage 1. There was an inquiry, whether you agree we needed it or not. Well, we have the findings of it, and those findings, along with our own city's lessons learned that we developed, because no one providing this project to the city wants the problems that ensued. That being said, I did a lot of traveling internationally before I mature and had a family. And I spent a lot of time on different rail lines. For example, I spent a lot of time in London, and I spent a lot of time sitting on trains that weren't moving in London. This city that has had it for over 100 years, and we've had it for a few. There are issues with buses when you run them. There are issues with trains when you run them. Our hope and what we're trying to do is create a system that is efficient, that lives up to the world-class mantra that we have given it. And with the right kind of maintenance schedule, with the right kind of monitoring, we believe that we will be in a different place at the end of stage 2 than we found ourselves at the end of stage 1.
As well, there was a inquiry on stage 1 in the process, and with 103 recommendations. I am on that subcommittee for the oversight, and I don't feel shy about asking questions to make sure that we are on track. So there is council oversight because we take this seriously, the recommendations, and we have to do better. And has been pointed out, a lot of information is more technology, more information is available, and it should be applied to stage 2. Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's any I've missed. Okay, sidewalk on the south side of Richmond at Edgeworth. Are you planning to, when are you planning to put it back?
So the excavation of the tunnel is what has precluded our ability to have sidewalks on the south side of Richmond Road. I'm just trying to think in my mind which side. Do you mean the sidewalk connecting Edgeworth to Richmond Road?
Well, this is coming from Mr. Eubank, who lives at 1190. Is he talking about right directly in front of the? No, that's not Edgeworth.
Yeah, I think they're talking about the sidewalk that goes from 1190 east, because right now the 1190 are diverted through that property.
And in terms of a timeline for that, Jamie, that was closed for the excavation work in zone 2, I believe.
Yeah.
So when that clears up, I imagine that sidewalk will reopen. And if I'm wrong on that front, please correct me. And if I am, please provide a date. Thank you.
No, I think that Houston, I'll have to get back to you on that. We'll work with Damon to get you an answer. And I don't know I don't have a precise answer for you. That's there's a lot of work going on in that area. Again, I've said that before, but once we go to through zone 2, then we've got to ultimately what we're trying to do is make that connection, because we've got that we're going to have to realign Richmond Road again, which will free up the space so that we can connect the tunnel from Byron Park to over to the north side of Richmond in that area. So we're working on that, and that work's going to be beginning, later this spring when we get to that. But that connectivity piece that you're asking, I'll have to take that away and get back to you with that more precise timing for you.
Okay, thank you. In terms of changes, what changes are being done to the wheels, axles, and rails in stage 2 that were not done in stage 1? And when will we get some details that anything will be different?
That's a pretty pointed question that I don't have information at hand that I can stand by and know that it's absolutely true. What I would request is if we could get a question like that emailed, then what we can do, you don't even need to email it. We'll work a document on the questions we received in chat. If we were unable to answer them, and even the ones we have, we will provide answers, and we'll be able to share that. Specifically, it's important to give the right information, not the wrong information, and that's what I want to do here. Thank you.
And stage 2 is using the same trains as stage 1.
That's correct. The Alstom Citadis Spirit are the vehicles that were designed for our system, and they are 38 new train sets are being added as part of the stage 2 project.
From Rick Nelson, the BRT filled in a ravine to keep at grade crossing at Holly Acres. This ravine was a wildlife corridor, or what are the plans to remove this at grade crossing and reestablish the ravine?
I'm pretty sure that at Holly Acres, the train guideway is going to be constructed in the BRT transitway.
Yeah.
So unless Jen is aware of something special, I think the answer is nothing.
So with respect to the grade realignments, you're correct, Damon, that is what is required in order to construct the project. Having said that, there are quite a number of compensation activities that are being conducted throughout the project, both within the project footprint and outside the project footprint, in order to compensate for any habitats or any wildlife corridors or any crossings that's being lost. So there are areas that have been identified where the project is required to provide, for example, the planting of trees and bushes in order to provide wildlife corridors in other areas because of the loss of wildlife corridors within the city for this project. And the regulators have stipulated the requirements of that compensation.
When is night work planned for between McEwen and New Orchard?
So Kev has stated that there is an increase in night work across the whole alignment in 2023. I have shared my email address to add yourselves to the Ward 7 weekly night work distribution summary. I get that information on Mondays and I share it on Mondays. That is the most current way to receive the most current information about upcoming night works. I highly encourage any of you who at least don't mind making a delete if you don't care to sign up for it. I think I send it out to over 175 people weekly, and I think that it does provide a benefit, and I encourage anyone who has these questions to sign up for it. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start wrapping up. So I'm going to try and go through the questions that are there now. At this point, I'll ask if you have further questions that you write directly to us, because I won't be able to read them all. I want to try and get through the ones that have already been put forward, if you don't mind. Thank you. I think we've covered a lot of territory. There was a news report on CTV that Kev has not paid out in damage claims. Mr. Robinson, is this true?
So I can't comment on particulars of our claims and the like, but I just glanced at that thing there. So that the question that came in chat. So a couple of things. So that people at times are going to think and that our construction activities have impacted their properties, and certainly folks are open to file a claim at any point in time. There's no sort of statute of limitations on these things. We take every claim seriously. We investigate it, and then ultimately, I mean, my role is a facilitator between the community and our claims people. So it goes off to the claims people, and they take a look at it, often with outside adjusters, and then decisions are made and rendered. If that's happened to people here on this call or elsewhere, the recourse is to go to small claims court. Again, there's no statute of limitations on that. You can do that at any particular point in time. The one thing I would say, and is when people have asked me how to file a claim, I help people with those, is that if you think that there's cracks in your home resulting from vibrations or the like, you build a case, take pictures of the cracks, have a date stamp on your camera, document all that information, and so that we can see how it's changed or may have changed over time. That gives you ultimately the best case, because it's up to the individual filing a claim to prove that we in fact caused the damage, because we'll have other evidence in terms that we look at to sort of to assess these claims. So so I would encourage folks to do that. And I can help folks lead you through the claims process. But again, don't feel discouraged that if you've been turned down for a claim, doesn't mean you can't resubmit it, or we can't reevaluate it, or you go to small claims court or whatever. It's a process that's sort of is pretty standard in terms of large construction projects. It's not dissimilar to the one the city uses. The city has passed it over to Kev to investigate claims, to deal with claims, and we do that as quickly and fairly as possible.
Okay, thank you. This is the last question. I'll read. I think it got answered partly on the chat. But when will Byron Avenue be reopened, where the tunnel comes into the Parkway area? It is the only available cycling route to Westboro, since the access from the SJAM MUP is closed until the Westboro Beach construction is finished. So that the collision of the two constructions, because that construction is the NCC construction.
Right. Now, that was answered in chat, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
okay. The closure of Byron Avenue in the vicinity of Redwood Cleary are in effect to allow for expedited construction of the tunnel pouring of the concrete construction of the station. But we do defer to the contractor in terms of providing an accurate prediction for when those closures would cease.
Yeah. And we'll have to get an update from the NCC on their construction. I think it's starting to wrap up. It was supposed to be, but as we know, construction gets behind schedule. And that's for the Westboro Beach redo. They closed last year. Jan has his hand up if he wants to add a comment. Can you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on a couple of questions that were asked very early on in the chat with respect to the air quality from either stockpiles or excavation activities, in terms of what are the potential health risks to that. I'll just make two comments on that. One is that the Ontario Ministry of Labor requires all contractors to monitor air quality for their workers' exposure, their occupational health exposure. And our project is compliant with the provincial guidelines. The assumption from that would be that then the public is also not at risk of any potential effects of the construction activities in terms of air quality and human health. The second thing I'll say is that we have 25 to 30 air quality monitors throughout the entire project that 24 hours a day are monitoring air quality. And the results of those monitors are showing that we are compliant with provincial regulations as well. So I just wanted to kind of with that that concern that was raised early on the comments about potential air quality concerns to the public from the construction activities. There are none that we are recording. So
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming out this evening. Thank you, Damon, Rosanna, Jamie, Jem, and the team, Campbell, for answering the questions. Really appreciate it. I think we've learned a lot. Still lots to do. Not there yet. Some pieces of good news, some further setbacks in terms of dates that we thought we were going to have, but we're continuing to move forward. That's the important stuff. So this will be, this is taped, and it will be taped. That's so old school. It's recorded.
On the beta or the
Taped.
VCR?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy.
Don't worry,
I'm
I
losing-
still do this when I ask to roll down the window.
You can
So-
do this.
It will be available through the newsletter on Friday. And I believe we're able to save the chat as well. And if there's any responses that we receive regarding questions that didn't get answered in time, we will post them on our newsletter. We will not be emailing them out because it's hard to tell who came and who didn't, and everybody wants to know the answer anyway. So we'll post them for everybody. That'll cover it off. Thank you again. I hope you stay safe tonight. I haven't checked out the window on the freezing rain yet, but supposed to have been starting. But I hope nobody has to go anywhere tomorrow. And I hope Biden was told to bring his cleats because he's in for a slippery time. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you,
rest
Counselor.
of the evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.